So the idea for the research began when I attended the Go Circular conference in Mannheim in Germany of March this year. And as part of the conference, there was a panel discussion represented by various brands and packaging manufacturers, and they stated that consumers will not pay any more for recycled products. It's just that simple. That actually is a critical issue for increased recycling, as the projects required to increase a recycling require investment that is premised on them achieving a premium which is greater than the fossil alternative. So was that statement correct? And if so, what influences it? As the core theoretical backbone to this work, I'm using Adjun's theory of planned behaviour, but there's also a great deal of associated work around the same theory basis relevant to circularity and recycling. Within that, it's often said that consumers express positive attitudes, but they don't convey or translate into purchasing recycling products. So I'm using a theory of planned behaviour as a core. That is that a person's behaviour is strongly predicted by their intention to act, and which is influenced by their attitudes, perceived social norms, and perceived control over their behaviour. But I'm actually bringing into this the additional barriers that are identified and not fully and completely explained in the basic planned behaviour model, including trust in recycled content claims, perceived product quality, perceived value, and price sensitivity. So I'm developing and building on the core foundation of the theory of planned behaviour. So from the literature, we can distill the various study concepts that will become the variables operationalized in the study. These are purchase intention, recycled product buying behavior, trust in recycled content claims, perceived product quality, perceived value, price sensitivity, previous purchase experience, and willingness to pay a premium, all of which have, as demonstrated on the slide, a supportive previous academic study and definition, often deriving scales for the study. So therefore, this pilot study seeks to address the problem of insufficient evidence on how recycled plastic products and sustainability specific factors interact to influence a consumer's intention to buy recycled products and their buying behaviour. It's meant to test an extended theory of planned behaviour model of consumer buying behaviour. Specifically, the study examines whether attitude, trust, perceived product quality, perceived value, and price sensitivity are associated with purchase intention, and whether purchase intention predicts self-reported buying behaviour. The study examines whether purchase intention mediates the relationship between perceived value and buying behaviour, and whether price sensitivity moderates the relationship between perceived value and purchase intention. I also, throughout the analysis, occasion to do some ad hoc analysis to further investigate the structure and the relationships of the data set. I've distilled that down into the research questions which are identified on the right here, which I won't read through, but in the second slide, those research questions are then distilled into a series of hypotheses. So based on the theoretical underpinning of planned behaviour therapy and also the ancillary work around planned behaviour therapy regarding recycled products, I've developed this conceptual model and the hypotheses. So to run through this, attitude, trust, perceived quality, perceived value, and price sensitivity will drive purchase intention. And then purchase intention itself will drive buying behavior. Now, to be specific, attitude, trust, perceived quality, and perceived value will, we think, positively correlate, and price sensitivity will negatively correlate to purchase intention. And purchase intention will positively correlate with buying behavior. We're also going to test some mediation and moderation pathways here. The mediation pathway, identified as the yellow here, is that purchase intention will mediate the relationship between perceived value to buying behavior, And the moderation pathway is that price sensitivity will moderate the relationship between perceived value and purchase intention. And so by using price sensitivity in this way, we're pulling in this aspect of price sensitivity to see whether or not it strengthens or weakens purchase intention towards buying behavior. We're also going to do some group comparisons here, which I've identified as the hypothesis 9 and 10, that previous buyers versus non-buyers differ in their purchase intention, and also looking at whether people who are willing to pay a premium versus the unwilling to pay differ in buying behavior. So Qualtrics was used as the platform for the survey design, within which I created separate blocks for each question, as creating the main study variables and the demographic data. The question structures can be reviewed in Appendix 1 of the presentation. Likert scales were used, which were aligned with previous concept scales used in prior research to test the variables. Reverse variables were used selectively in the question structures. Cronbach alpha tests and factor analysis was used with the data to ensure that the questioned items in the scales measured the same underlying concept. Greater than 0.6 I considered acceptable, given this is a pilot study. And the test results demonstrated that for all of the variables that was achieved, greater than 0.6. For trust and for price sensitivity, I adjusted the data by removing certain questions in order to increase the Cronbach alpha, and settled on that. I used convenience sampling, and I distributed through various vectors, including my company global email address, LinkedIn connections, community groups, Facebook pages, direct requests to friends, and from the ever-present Hult DBA cohort. I had 134 total submissions. That was reduced to 117 after elimination of spoiled inputs and significantly incomplete data sets. And in the test, as I've said, through my hypotheses, I'm going to use correlation, regression, mediation, and moderation analysis and t-tests. So let's first and foremost look at the descriptive statistics of this sample. I think overall the sample can be described predominantly as UK European, highly educated, relatively affluent, mostly employed, and concentrated around the Generation X and millennial age groups. The gender balance is reasonably even, but is less balanced in relation to ethnicity, education, and geography. The sample is useful, I think, for analysing customer attitudes towards recycled products, but it is not demographically neutral, and the findings may be especially reflective of educated, higher income UK European consumers. So therefore, okay for a pilot study, but any conclusions around purchase intention, perceived value, and the other variables should be reflected upon and presented with this demographic profile in mind. But this is a pilot study, so I didn't have any large skews here, so I was happy to proceed. So who's willing to pay a premium? It's very interesting. 39.3% said they would pay a premium or they would pay more, and a very similar proportion, 37.6, says they were unsure. That's when they were asked a direct question, will you pay, yes or no? Interestingly, when they were asked how much they would pay, 69.2% indicated that they would pay a premium of some nature, compared to 39.3% who said that they would when they were asked a yes or no question. Almost all of the respondents, 97.4%, said that they would pay a premium if the recycled product was the same price and quality as the conventional alternative. And I think in the summation, this data is quite interesting because it appears to suggest that a premium will be paid, but that quality, price, and other aspects are influencing the decision. The descriptive statistics for the main composite variables were looked at and generally indicated favourable responses concerning those facets towards recycled products. What's quite interesting, though, is that despite these favourable responses, trust, perceived value, and price sensitivity appear to be sort of important explanatory factors. Price sensitivity, for instance, had the lowest mean and the highest standard deviation, indicating a more neutral to moderate level of price sensitivity and greater variability of answers amongst the respondents. Similarly, perceived value had slightly lower than attitude and quality in terms of the mean. And trust had standard deviation indicated that there were more varied responses amongst the respondents. So we went on to the correlations, and all of the correlations were positive and significant, suggesting that all of the independent variables, I shall come to price sensitivity separately, but all of the independent variables correlated strongly with purchase intention, and that was significant. Price sensitivity, as expected, was negatively but significantly correlated with purchase intention. And then purchase intention itself was strongly and positively correlated with buying behavior. This is what we expected to see. And that supports the core estimate, the core foundation of extended theory of planned behavior model. So the strong positive relationship between purchase intention and buying behavior further supports the theory of planned behavior. And then we moved on to the multiple linear regressions to examine this issue further. So in this multiple linear regression test, what we're doing is we're throwing all of the variables in to see their effect on purchase intention. Overall, the model was statistically significant, explaining 61.1% of the variance in purchase intention. When that is adjusted, it becomes 59.3%. Very interestingly, however, when everything is considered together in the regression, the only significant driver to purchase intention is perceived value. Product quality, trust, and price sensitivity are not significant. And attitude is marginal, but I'm considering it not significant for the purposes of the study. So that's interesting because although individual items, when tested under a correlation, are significantly correlated with purchase intention, perceived value becomes the dominant unique predictor when all variables are put together. So it's interesting because you could infer from this that in practical terms, consumers are most likely to intend to buy recycled products when they perceive them as good value. And that is probably the dominant pathway we will see. That appears to be the dominant pathway rather than the individual correlations. And so it seems to support the argument that recycled products are not bought simply because people like sustainability, but because they are seen as worth buying. So it's probably worth just sort of saying some words about why we think quality, trust, attitude, and price sensitivity lose significance. I mean, the Pearson's correlation test shows that many predictors are strongly related to each other, as demonstrated in the table, which is a sea of 3 stars. And I think this probably indicates that predictors overlap here, and that when considered together, the perceived value captures most of the explanatory power. And although variables are positively related to purchase intention, their effects are absorbed into perceived value when all the predictors are considered simultaneously. You know, in the real world, I think what that means is that consumers may translate trust, quality perceptions, and favorable attitudes into purchase intention through perceived value, that the factors contribute to an overall sense that recycled products offer good value. So I think at this point, hypothesis 1, 2, 3, and 5 are supported at the correlation level, but not as unique predictors in the multiple regression model. And hypothesis 4 is supported in both correlation and regression analysis. So the final regression we did here was on purchase intention through to product buying behavior. Again, this model was statistically significant and explained 53.1% of the variance in buying behavior, adjusted 52.7%. That indicates that respondents with stronger intentions to purchase recycled products are significantly more likely to report buying behavior of recycled products, and therefore hypothesis 6 is supported. That supports the theory of planned behavior assumption that intention is a key antecedent of behavior, of buying. And so I decided to do an ad hoc analysis here. So whilst not actually in the conceptual model, I really wanted to understand the further regressions on whether purchase intention, perceived product quality, trust attitude, price sensitivity, and perceived value predicted buying behavior. So I'm kind of going forward from those variables to buying behavior now. This model was statistically significant and explained 59.3% of the variance in buying behavior. Purchase intention, as we would expect, was the strongest significant predictor. So respondents with stronger purchase intention reported higher buying behavior. Price sensitivity was also a significant negative predictor, suggesting, which is kind of logical, that more price sensitive consumers reported lower buying behavior. Interestingly, perceived value was not a significant direct predictor of buying behavior once purchase intention is included, which is an initial indicator, I think, of the potential outcome of the mediation analysis that's going to be conducted. Trust showed a significant negative coefficient, although it should be noted that trust was positively correlated with buying behavior in the initial Pearson's correlations, but after controlling for other variables, the remaining unique part of trust is negatively associated with buying behavior. This reversal suggests a possible suppression effect, likely because trust shares substantial variance with perceived value, attitude, and purchase intention. Product quality and attitude were not significant predictors in the full model. So buying behavior is primarily explained by purchase intention. Perceived value matters strongly, but mainly because purchase intention rather than directly increasing buying behavior. So trust, quality, attitude are related to buying behavior at the correlation level, but their unique effects are weakened through purchase intention, and perceived value are included. So does purchase intention mediate the relationship between perceived value and buying behavior? Mediation was conducted using process model 4 to test this. Perceived value significantly predicted purchase intention. We saw that previously. Purchase intention also significantly predicted buying behavior when perceived value was added in the model. The total effect on perceived value on buying behavior was also significant. However, the direct effect of perceived value on buying behavior became non-significant when purchase intention was included. The indirect effect was significant. So this is full mediation. Therefore, hypothesis 7 is supported. Purchase intention fully mediates the relationship between perceived value and purchase intention. And at this point, I decided to just flesh this out and complete this by an ad hoc analysis to see whether, noting how significant perceived value was in its effect on the data set through purchase intention and buying behavior, I wanted to understand whether perceived value mediated the relationship between other variables and purchase intention. It's interesting, attitude was partially mediated, trust was fully mediated, and perceived product quality was also fully mediated, and all of those being significant. And I think that's interesting. And perceived value steps out now from the analysis as one of the primary drivers here in the relationships of the data sets. And also probably we should reflect is about the fact that other variables losing significant in the regressions and perceived value becoming the major dominant driver to purchase intention is further demonstrated by these results. So the next thing to look at here was price sensitivity. Does price sensitivity moderate the relationship between perceived value and purchase intention? So we used process model 1 to do that. The model was statistically significant, explaining 59.5% of the variance in purchase intention. Perceived value was a strong positive indicator of purchase intention. Price sensitivity was not a significant predictor. The interaction explained only an additional 0.08% of the variance in purchase intention. So therefore, hypothesis 8 is not supported. Price sensitivity does not moderate the relationship between perceived value and purchase intention. These findings suggest that although perceived value strongly predicts purchase intention, the relationship is not significantly weakened by price sensitivity in this sample. So perceived value influences buying behavior mainly through increasing purchase intention, but price sensitivity does not significantly alter the perceived value purchase intention relationship. So in this sample, value perception appears to be the dominant factor. Once respondents perceive recycled products as offering good value, price sensitivity does not significantly weaken their intention to buy. I think that's a very interesting result. So the last series of hypotheses we needed to test were comparators between groups, which I was going to use independent samples t-tests to do. The first t-test was to do with do previous buyers and non-previous buyers differ in purchase intention. I was not able to conduct this test because all survey responders identified themselves as previous buyers. So I did not have no non-previous buyers to compare. However, I did have two groupings with those consumers willing and unwilling to pay a premium. And so the t-test was conducted between consumers who are willing and unwilling to pay a premium for recycled products, and whether or not that they had a difference in attitude towards buying behaviour. Respondents willing to pay a premium reported higher buying behaviour than those respondents unwilling to pay a premium, and the difference was statistically significant with a mean difference of 1.048. So therefore the hypothesis 10 is supported, and that suggests that willingness to pay a premium is associated with substantially higher self-reported recycled product buying behaviour. So I had the age-related data, so I grouped that to form generations amongst the sample, and I just wanted to see whether or not generational differences could emerge amongst the data set. So I completed a one-way ANOVA for the key study variables, and the results showed no meaningful generational differences in perceived product quality, attitude, perceived value, or self-reported buying behaviour. The mean for purchase intention scores were similar across the groups, suggesting that intention to purchase recycled products was broadly consistent across the generations. Similarly, buying behaviour showed only minor differences actually across the age groups. The most notable generational difference was for trust. Trust in recycled content claim was lowest among Gen Z respondents and highest among baby boomers. The post hoc Turkey comparisons indicated that this was statistically significant. This suggests that younger respondents may be more skeptical of recycled content claims than older respondents. But overall, the generational analysis suggests that age is not a primary determinant of purchase intention or buying behaviour, but it may be relevant to trust. So let's therefore run through our results and to see where we are. The Pearson's correlation results showed that the independent variables were positively and significantly correlated to purchase intention. Price sensitivity was negatively and significantly correlated to purchase intention. Purchase intention itself was strongly and positively correlated with buying behaviour, supporting the previous literature position and the mechanism expected from the extended theory of planned behaviour model. Under regression, perceived value was the only statistically significant predictor of purchase intention. Attitude approached significance but did not reach the conventional threshold. Product quality, trust, and price sensitivity were not significant predictors in the multiple regression model. These findings show that although several factors were significantly correlated with purchase intention, perceived value was the dominant unique predictor when all variables were considered together in the multiple regression model. In regression, purchase intention was a statistically significant positive predictor of buying behavior. Purchase intention fully mediated the relationship between perceived value and purchase intention, but price sensitivity did not moderate the relationship between perceived value and purchase intention. Those willing to pay a premium are associated with substantially higher self-reported recycled product buying behaviors. So that means that all of the previously proposed hypotheses were found to be accepted and sustained, other than hypothesis 8, which was rejected, and hypothesis 9 was not tested due to the data set not allowing me to differentiate a non-buying group. So let's dig a little into what all of this means. So at the correlation level, attitude, trust, perceived product quality, etc., were all positively associated with purchase intention, and price sensitivity, as we expected, was negatively associated with purchase intention. So purchase intention was also strongly correlated with buying behavior. Now, all of that construct initially supports the extended theory of planned behavior model because it shows that favorable beliefs and evaluations are linked with stronger intention, and that intention is linked with the behavior of buying. However, the regression results provide, I think, a more precise explanation. So when attitude, trust, perceived quality, etc., and price sensitive are entered together, perceived value was the only statistically significant predictor of purchase intention. So although these variables are related to purchase intention, they do not independently explain the intention once perceived value is considered. In practical terms, consumers may like recycled products, trust the claims about them, and believe they are good quality, but these factors appear to matter most when they contribute to a broader judgment that the product is worth buying. I think this is probably the most important conclusion from the study. Perceived value is the dominant driver of purchase intention in this sample. Recycled products are not likely to be purchased simply because consumers support sustainability in principle. Consumers need to believe that recycled products offer a worthwhile combination of environmental benefit, product quality, credibility, usefulness, and acceptable cost. The mediation results, I think, strengthen this conclusion. Purchase intention significantly mediated the relationship between perceived value and buying behavior. This means perceived value does not mainly translate directly into buying behavior. Instead, perceived value first increases purchase intention, and purchase intention then leads to self-reported buying behavior. This again supports the theory of planned behavior logic that intention is the closest psychological antecedent of behavior. The ad hoc mediation results provide further explanation. Perceived value partially mediated the relationship between attitude and purchase intention, and fully mediated the relationship between trust and quality and purchase intention. This means attitude still has some direct effect on purchase intention, but most of its effects operates through value. Trust and product quality operate mainly through perceived value to form purchase intention. Therefore, trust and quality matter because they help consumers decide whether recycled products are worth buying. Price sensitivity produced a more nuanced finding. It was negatively correlated with purchase intention and was a significant negative predictor of buying behavior in the full behavioral regression model. However, price sensitivity did not significantly moderate the relationship between perceived value and purchase intention. This means that price sensitivity does not weaken the value intention relationship in this sample. Once consumers perceive recycled products as good value, price sensitivity does not appear to substantially reduce their intention to buy. However, price sensitivity still appears to matter at the behavioral stage when more price-sensitive consumers report lower buying behavior. Therefore, price may operate more as a practical purchasing barrier than as a psychological barrier to forming intention. So, examination of the willingness to pay shows that recycled products have strong consumer appeal when price and quality are equal to conventional alternatives. Almost all respondents, 97.4%, said they would choose the recycled product if it was the same price and quality as conventional products. This suggests that respondents do not reject recycled products in principle. Recycled content is viewed positively when there is no perceived sacrifice. However, the willingness to pay is more conditional. When asked whether they would pay a premium for a product containing recycled materials, 39% said yes and 23% said no, and 37% were unsure. Premium willingness exists, but it is not firmly established across the sample. The maximum acceptable premium results show that tolerance is mainly limited to modest increases. 69.2% indicated some willingness to pay a premium. The most common response was up to 5% more, selected by 35%. and a further 27.4 were willing to pay 6 to 10% more, and only 6.8% would pay 11 to 20% more. This suggests that support declines sharply as the premium increases. These findings align with the wider regression and mediation results. Perceived value was the strongest predictor of purchase intention, while price sensitivity was negatively associated with buying behavior. The willingness to pay results help explain this pattern. Consumers are willing to choose recycled products when there is no trade-off, but are more cautious when a price premium is introduced. These findings also support the t-test results, showing that the premium willing customers reported significantly higher buying behavior than premium and unwilling customers. This suggests that willingness to pay is linked not only to attitude, but also to reported purchasing behavior. The generational analysis shows that age is not a major driver of purchase intention or buying behavior. Purchase intention and buying behavior were broadly similar across age groups. This means recycled product purchasing should not be treated only as a young consumer issue. The main generational difference concerned trust, with younger respondents reporting lower trust than older respondents. This suggests that younger consumers may be more skeptical of recycled content claims, possibly due to greater concern about greenwashing. However, the main drivers of purchase intention and buying behavior were value, intention, and price-related factors, not age. Overall, the findings suggest that businesses and policymakers should focus less on simply promoting recycled products as environmentally positive and more on proving their value. Consumers need to see recycled products as credible and good quality, fairly priced, and worth buying. Sustainability messaging alone is unlikely to be sufficient. Recycled products need to be positioned to strong consumer propositions, not just ethical alternatives. The key conclusion, I think, is that perceived value is the central mechanism in the model. Attitude, trust, quality help build perceived value, but perceived value drives purchase intention, and purchase intention drives buying behavior. But price sensitivity remains a practical barrier to buying behavior, and willingness to pay a premium distinguishes stronger buyers from weaker buyers. Therefore, increasing recycled product adoption requires converting positive sustainability attitudes into perceived consumer value. Will consumers buy recycled products? Yes. Is it that simple? Absolutely not. So, in conclusion, will consumers pay a price premium for recycled plastic products? Well, yes, counter to the statement at the brand representative at the Go Circular conference. This sample demonstrates strong consumer preference for recycled products where price and quality are equivalent to conventional alternatives, with 69.2% indicating a tolerance for a premium. These findings suggest that recycled content products have strong consumer appeal, but that market acceptance is likely to depend on maintaining price competitiveness and demonstrating equivalent product quality, not just on the fact that it is recycled alone. The findings support the theory of planned behaviour by showing that purchase intention is the strongest predictor of buying behaviour. However, the results also show that perceived value is the dominant driver of purchase intention. Attitude, trust, and quality matter, but mainly because they help build perceived value. Price sensitivity does not moderate the perceived value to purchase intention relationship, but it remains a direct barrier to buying behavior. Therefore, recycled product adoption depends less on sustainability attitudes alone and more on converting those attitudes into a clear perception of consumer value. Future research could possibly test the revised value-centered model from this study with a larger, more representative sample, including both previous buyers and non-buyers, which I didn't get in the sample. Further studies should incorporate the full, I think, theory of planned behaviour by adding subjective norms and perceived behavioural controls, whilst also examining perceived value in more detail. Since price sensitivity predicted buying behaviour but did not moderate the value-intention relationship, future research could use realistic price premium experiments or choice-based methods to examine how price affects actual purchase decisions. Further studies should also move away beyond self-reported behaviour, examine specific potential product categories, and test whether trust-building mechanisms such as certification, labelling, and traceability, specifically issues in recyclability, increase perceived value and purchase intention. But that's the summation of my research, and thank you for your attention.